All right, get ready, because today we're diving into a book that says we can all add a little magic, a little sparkle to our work and lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Amaze and Delight,
Okay.
and it's written by Robert Strong and David Martinez, two magicians who've spent decades, literally decades, wowing audiences.
Wow, yeah.
And they're not promising to, make your performance review disappear
Right.
or anything like that. But they do break down how we can all borrow a page from the magician's playbook
Yeah.
to be more engaging, more persuasive, more, well,
More delightful.
delightful, they said.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating about this book is how they draw these direct lines between, the strategies that magicians use and the strategies that, let's say, successful businesses use to really captivate their audience.
Yeah, it's about grabbing that attention and holding on to it, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the book starts, kind of interestingly, by taking us backstage.
Okay.
It reveals this really meticulous preparation that happens before the magician even steps foot on the stage.
Interesting.
So apparently, the real magic, it often starts long before that curtain even goes up.
Yeah, absolutely. And they really emphasize that. It's not just about, practicing your tricks. It's about setting the stage for success in every single aspect. They call it meticulous preparation.
I love that.
And, one of the ways they illustrate this is through what Robert Strong calls culture interviews.
Culture interviews. So he's like, what, doing his homework on the audience before he even meets them.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, he digs deep, and unearths those little details. Maybe it's awards they've won, inside jokes, even like, what the audience's favorite office snacks are? And he weaves those little nuggets into his act, and it creates this instant connection because,
Makes them feel seen.
Exactly. It shows that, you've taken the time to understand them, their values, their quirks.
It shows you're invested, right? You're not just phoning it in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes all the difference. In the book, Strong, he talks about this one time he was performing for this AI car company.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that one.
Right.
Wasn't that the company where their tech was kind of initially mocked by some magazine?
Yes.
What do they call it? Like horse shit or something?
Yeah, they did. It was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And you know what Strong did? He opened his act and he looked at the audience and he said, "Congratulations, folks. You've successfully turned horseshit into horsepower."
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right.
I can only imagine the eruption of laughter and applause. That is such a simple but such a powerful example of how a little personalized humor,
Right.
it can just disarm a room and really win people over.
Totally. It's about connecting on that human level, right?
Yeah,
And that's something that we can all apply,
absolutely.
whether we're giving a presentation, leading a team meeting, or even just chatting with a colleague at the water cooler.
For sure, it's about showing up prepared,
Mm-hmm.
but not just with the content, but with an understanding of who you're actually talking to.
Absolutely.
And what I love is that these guys, they offer these really practical, actionable takeaways.
Yes.
Things you can actually use.
For sure.
And another one that I thought was so clever was this idea of party starters.
Oh, yeah. Love that concept. And again, it ties back into that idea of setting the stage, right?
Yeah.
Setting the stage for a successful interaction.
So what do they mean by party starters? How
Right.
do magicians use this?
Okay. So imagine you're at a magic show.
Okay.
Right. Before the main act even starts, a magician might go around to each table, maybe perform a quick trick, tell a joke,
Yeah.
something simple, and then ask that group for a big cheer when they hit the stage later.
So they're planting these little seeds of excitement and anticipation.
Exactly.
So that by the time the actual show starts, the audience they're warmed up, they're ready to be amazed.
They're primed. Yeah, exactly. And it's, it's not just magic shows. Think about those champions you see in like virtual meetings. Oh, yeah. Those people who are always camera on, they're like actively participating in the chat.
Yes.
They bring that energy.
They're like the virtual party starters.
Yes, they really are.
They're setting the tone for a much more engaging and productive meeting just by, being present and enthusiastic.
Right.
And it creates this ripple effect, right, where other people then feel more comfortable and encouraged to also participate.
Absolutely. It's subtle, but it's such a powerful way to kind of influence the dynamics of any group.
For sure, for sure.
And speaking of influencing dynamics, Strong and Martinez, they dedicate this whole section to this art of evoking specific emotions.
Yes.
It's like they're almost like emotional architects.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about the tricks, it's about what feeling am I trying to evoke in the audience. Exactly. It's about being intentional about the experience you want to create. right? So let's say you're giving a presentation to your team.
Right.
Are you trying to, get them really fired up about some new project? Or maybe you're trying to build trust with like a potential investor.
Right.
So just like a magician will choose their tricks very specifically to evoke certain emotions,
Okay.
you can design your interactions to try to elicit those feelings in your audience.
It's like you're setting the emotional tone almost.
Exactly. And they use this great example in the book. Apple. Remember that feeling of holding like the first iPhone?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was
It's
like,
magical.
it's like holding the future, kind of.
Exactly. That sense of wonder, that feeling of possibility, that was intentional. Right. The pinch to zoom, FaceTime, these weren't just, cool features.
Right.
They were very carefully crafted to create that very specific emotional response.
So they understood the power of evoking wonder.
Yes.
Interesting.
Okay.
So whether it's a product launch, a team meeting, even just like a one-on-one conversation, we can be more mindful of those emotions we're trying to evoke.
Be intentional about it.
That'd be intentional. Okay. I like that.
And by being intentional about it, you create these much more engaging and impactful experiences for everyone involved.
For sure. Now, speaking of engagement,
Yes.
one of the things that, that magicians, they're masters of, is capturing an audience's attention and holding it.
Yeah, and that is no small feat.
No. Especially in our world, right? I mean, we are just inundated with distractions.
Absolutely.
Like everywhere you turn, something's vying for your attention.
All the time, yep.
But in the book, they actually break down some really specific techniques that we can borrow
Okay.
from the world of magic to become these masters of engagement ourselves.
Interesting.
And some of these, I have to say, were so clever. I was like, oh, that is brilliant.
Yeah, they're really smart guys.
They really are.
They talk about the science behind like pattern disruption.
Okay.
How our brains, they just naturally perk up when something unexpected happens.
We're wired for that novelty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they break down the art of crafting these killer opening lines.
Right. Like hook 'em.
Hook them immediately. Yeah. That's how you get people to lean in.
There was that story. Oh, I loved this story about this magician who was trying to like boost attendance at his college shows.
Oh, right. Was that the one where he sent out the bunny ears?
Yes. The bunny ears. Instead of just like putting up a poster,
Right.
he sent out these like bunny ears to everybody on campus.
So smart.
I know.
Such a simple idea.
And of course, he shows up and he's got this whole entourage of people wearing bunny ears.
Instant buzz.
Instant buzz. And suddenly everybody's talking about the bunny ear magician.
Of course they are.
And his shows were packed.
Yeah.
It's such a great example of thinking outside the box.
Totally.
Using a little creativity to really grab people's attention.
And a little whimsy.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
And it made me think, like, how can we apply that to, to our work? Right?
Sure.
How can we make our presentations, more engaging?
Mhm.
How can we shake things up in our meetings?
Yeah, it's about bringing that element of surprise, right?
Hmm.
That touch of whimsy, something to capture people's imaginations.
Totally.
Mm.
And speaking of capturing imaginations, another takeaway for me from this whole section was the power of storytelling,
Yes.
which,
Magicians they're master storytellers.
they are.
Right. They understand that a well-told story can just create this emotional connection that goes way beyond,
Yeah.
just the tricks themselves.
And they actually break down one of the author's own career transitions as an example.
You're right. Yes. Yeah.
David, I believe it was.
Yeah, David.
He had this fascinating career shift. He went from Apple,
From Apple. Yeah.
where he was, at the forefront of tech and innovation,
Cutting edge. Mhm.
to the world of magic.
Which is kind of magical in itself, right?
It is.
To leave that world and go into this completely different field.
But instead of just presenting it as like, oh, here's my career change,
Yeah.
they frame it as a story
Yes.
with a very clear narrative arc.
Brilliant.
So Dave's the protagonist, right?
It is.
His conflict is leaving the security of this amazing job at Apple.
Right.
The adventure is him navigating this whole uncertain new path. And then the resolution is his, ultimate success and fulfillment as a magician.
They break it down, like you said, they break it down as a story. And they
Yeah.
even point out that this structure, this narrative structure, it's something that you can use to make your work presentations more engaging.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, people connect with stories.
We remember stories for sure.
We do.
Yeah.
So the next time you're putting together a presentation, ask yourself, like, what's the story here?
Yeah, what's the story I'm really trying to tell?
How can I weave a narrative that's really going to resonate with the people listening?
And make it memorable, right?
Exactly.
Because you want people to walk away remembering what you said.
It's about finding that human element in every interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And stories are just such a powerful way to do that.
Powerful way to do that, absolutely.
Now, speaking of human connection,
Yes.
another chapter that really resonated with me was all about creating these magical moments, those gestures that go above and beyond to make people feel seen and appreciated.
Like we're really tailoring their performances, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they share how they keep meticulous notes about clients, remembering birthdays, their kids' names, even like those weird food preferences, that most people wouldn't even notice.
Oh, wow.
And then they sprinkle those details into future interactions, and it shows this level of care and attention to detail that just, it goes above and beyond.
Especially in our world right now, where everything is like generic emails, automated this, automated that.
Right.
That personal touch.
It means so much.
It does. It makes you feel like, oh, you see me as a human.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not just a number. You're
Yeah.
not just a transaction. You're an actual person. And that's huge. And another one they talk about is the power of genuine compliments.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
And they're not talking about those like generic good job pats on the back.
Right.
They're talking about noticing and acknowledging the specific things that people do well, right? To show that you see the effort and you appreciate their contributions.
It's about making it specific and genuine.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And they suggest even starting like a ritual in your workplace where, maybe it's a weekly thing where everybody shares a win from their team.
I love that.
So it's like ingrained in the culture of the company to celebrate each other's work.
Yes. It's like building that culture of appreciation
Totally.
where people feel seen, they feel valued.
Exactly. It's making appreciation a habit, not just like a once a year performance review kind of thing.
All right. Exactly.
Now, get ready to laugh because these guys, I was in stitches reading this chapter on the power of humor,
Yeah. This one was fun.
especially in the workplace, right?
This chapter had me laughing out loud because I never thought it'd be like taking notes on the art of the well-placed overreaction.
Right.
But they made a really compelling case for why humor is such a superpower.
And they break it down,
They do.
different humor styles like, using hyperbole, telling those self-deprecating jokes that kind of take the sting out of stressful situations, and even mastering that like well-timed over-the-top reaction.
Yes. One of the techniques Robert Strong talks about is hyperbolic flattery.
Okay.
So it's like exaggerating a company or a person's positive traits
Right.
to kind of create this humorous effect.
Right. It's like, taking something that's already positive and just blowing it out of proportion
Exactly.
to take it out.
And he gives this great example.
Yeah.
He was hired to perform for this fast-growing self-driving car company
Okay.
that was really into Star Wars.
I love that detail.
And so how does he open his act? He looks at the audience and he says, this company is growing so fast, I hear they just signed a deal to automate the Rebel Alliance's entire fleet.
That's hilarious.
It's brilliant because it's like, you can't really be offended by that.
It's true.
It's like, it's funny. And it's like, yeah, they are growing that fast.
Exactly.
And they also emphasize this idea of like punching up with humor.
Okay.
So, if you're going to make a joke,
Yeah.
poke fun at those in positions of power,
Right.
never down at the people who are, less powerful.
Punch up, never punch down.
Punch up, never punch down. Exactly.
I like that.
Which I think it's a great reminder for all of us, just to be mindful of, the power dynamics at play
Absolutely.
and make sure our humor is inclusive and it's never at someone else's expense.
Well said.
Speaking of teamwork and dynamics,
Yes.
the next chapter took kind of a surprising turn for me.
Okay.
It went into the world of improv comedy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I have to say, when I first saw that, I was like, okay, how is this going to tie in?
Right. Right.
But they totally won me over
Okay.
because it's not really about like putting on a show or anything like that.
Right.
It's about applying these core principles of improv, like listening, collaboration, really building on each other's ideas
Yeah, those are all good things.
to create this much more positive and productive work environment.
Absolutely.
So their big takeaway was this whole idea of embracing the power of yes and.
Yeah.
You know that improv principle where you accept what your scene partner's offering
Right.
and you build on it.
You don't negate it. You build on it.
You build on it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that.
And they argue that this simple phrase can unlock so much creativity, so much better collaboration
I can see that.
within teams, and they actually give you these improv games that you can play with your team,
Oh, fun. Okay.
which I thought was brilliant. And one that I really liked was called New Choice.
Oh, okay.
And so 2 people are tasked with planning an event,
Oh, right.
and they can only speak 1 sentence at a time,
Oh, wow.
and they have to build on the previous idea.
Okay.
And if someone says something that's like just not very inspired, a director hits a bell,
Keeps them on their toes.
and they have to come up with something better.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that great?
That's a great game, yeah.
So it forces you to really think outside the box,
For sure.
and it creates that space where there are no bad ideas.
That's huge.
It's just, how can we make this better?
And they have another game, it's called Yes and,
Okay.
where 2 people, they just riff off each other and they have to constantly build on what the other person's saying.
Give me an example.
So it could start as simple as like, this meeting needs better snacks.
Okay, I like where this is going.
And it could, it could spiral into this hilarious conversation about like the productivity benefits of edible sticky notes.
See, there you go. You're already yes and
And
exact.
it sounds so silly, but I can already feel like my brain is like,
It gets you thinking.
how can we make meetings more fun?
It gets those creative juices flowing. Exactly. So it's really about shifting from that yes but mentality.
Which can really stifle creativity.
Oh, absolutely.
To a much more open and collaborative yes and
Right.
approach.
And that's what we're all striving for, right? Speaking of creating a more open and supportive environment,
Yes.
the next chapter goes into the importance of this idea of psychological safety
Yes, so important.
within teams.
And this really resonated with me because they make the case that psychological safety, that feeling of, everyone feels comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas, making mistakes even, without fear of judgment.
Right, like you're not going to be punished for trying something new and having it not work out.
Exactly. That is the foundation.
Safe to take risks.
Yes. For a high-performing team.
Yeah.
Because when you feel safe, you're more likely to take risks. You're more likely to, be innovative.
Be your authentic self, right?
Exactly. And they offer some really concrete advice on how to actually assess that level of psychological safety within your own team.
Okay.
Like they suggest using anonymous surveys with questions like, do I feel safe speaking up in meetings? Or do I trust that my teammates will support me even if I, make a mistake?
It's about creating that space for honest feedback,
Absolutely.
right? Both positive and negative.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that's how we grow.
That's how we learn.
Yeah, we don't grow in a vacuum.
Exactly. And it's not just about feeling, safe to share ideas.
Sure.
It's about feeling comfortable bringing your whole self to work.
Yes. Be your authentic self.
And they actually use this phrase, embracing quirks.
I love
There's
that.
little things that make us unique, right?
Mhm.
And like one of the authors, he used to have this Rubik's Cube suspended in a bottle
Right.
on his desk at Apple.
That's cool. And quirky.
It was this conversation starter, and it kind of signaled to people that like it's okay to be a little different.
Yeah. Let your freak flag fly.
Let your personality shine through. Exactly.
It's okay to be you.
Yeah, and that really resonated with me because I think we've all been in those work environments where there's this pressure to conform,
Oh, absolutely.
fit a certain mold.
Yeah.
But when we feel like we can be ourselves, when we feel accepted for who we are, that's when we do our best work.
Absolutely.
That's when the magic really happens.
Right. That's when the magic happens.
And speaking of, that brings us to kind of our final chapter, which I think is so relevant, especially today.
Okay.
It's all about mastering connection in a digital world.
Yes, because that is the challenge, right? We're all dealing with this now, this hybrid work environment, these virtual meetings.
Zoom fatigue is real.
It is real, and I think we've all been in those meetings where it's like this could have been an email.
Absolutely.
But Strong and Martinez, they give us some really concrete tips
They do.
on how to make these online interactions more engaging, more human.
Oh, it's magical.
More magic, even through a screen, it's not easy to do.
It's tough.
It's tough. But one of the things they're really big on is they're like, up your tech game.
Yeah.
Invest in good lighting. Invest in a decent microphone. Make sure your background is like not a cluttered mess.
Right. It's the equivalent like dressing sharp for an in-person meeting.
Exactly.
Right. You're putting your best foot forward. It shows that you You respect the other people's time. You
Right.
care about the experience you're creating for them,
Exactly.
even though it's virtual.
And they also talk about the importance of making these virtual events more interactive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not enough to just be talking at people through a screen.
Right.
You got to find ways to draw them in.
Engagement is key, right?
Engagement is key. So use the polls, the breakout rooms. Those features are there for a reason.
They are, absolutely.
They even talk about like incorporating physical objects
Oh,
that
interesting.
you can send to the attendees in advance.
I love that.
Right. So it's like you're creating this multi-sensory experience,
It's like bridging that gap.
even when you're miles apart.
Exactly. Yeah, finding creative ways to build that connection.
You know, this book, it was such a treasure trove of practical wisdom.
It really was.
And I love that they even included like actual magic tricks at the end of each chapter.
Oh, that's fun.
It's like they're saying, don't just read this book, like go out and do something with it.
Actionable advice.
Yes. So if our listeners could take away just one thing
Mhm.
from this whole conversation, this deep dive into Amaze and Delight,
Yeah.
what would you want that to be?
I love how the authors talk about the power of those personalized experiences, right? And I would challenge your listeners to design their own culture interview.
Yeah.
For their team, their colleagues, find those small but meaningful ways to, to show your colleagues that you see them, that you appreciate them, and you value their unique contributions.
There's a little appreciation can go a long way.
It goes such a long way, and the insights you'll get and the connections that you'll build, I mean, it can really transform your work relationships.
Some really great advice there. I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I always love chatting with you.
Me too. Always a pleasure.
And listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the magical world of Amaze and Delight. Until next time, remember, a little bit of wonder can go a long way.